How deep the Father's love for us.
Literally overnight, it all changed. We weren't allowed to meet in buildings together with the social distancing.
That he should give his only Son.
Obviously, we had no idea how long it was going to last. We had no idea how severe it was going to be.
Why should I gain from his reward?
People were very, very worried. People were very upset.
Answer, but
And people of faith really went out of the way to support those in need.
my ransom.
It would have been the first time they had to close in 800 years if they had been around in the 30th century. But in the times of the COVID-19 pandemic, this became a symbol of how the virus has impacted the spiritual life of almost 5 million people in the northwest of England who say to belong to a religion.
It was a huge restriction because it becomes part of people's life. You know, you wake up, you go to work, you take time out to worship, whatever that may be. My name is Fazal Rahim. I'm the coordinator of Oldham's Interfaith Forum. It's an organization made up of the churches, the mosques, and there are 2 Hindu temples in Oldham.
Oldham's Interfaith Forum is based on this 19th century church. The organization works to break walls between different faith communities in the town. Mufti Halal Mahmood also works with the forum. He's the development officer for the Oldham Mosques Council, an umbrella organization for the town's mosques.
I was born in Oldham. I've lived all my life in Oldham. I'm the Minister of Religion for the Muslim community and I'm an Imam. I am also a Mufti. Mufti is a person who specializes in Islamic law. When the pandemic started, within our communities, what I felt was there was no sense of direction. In this situation, what we were seeing is a lot of people were going into the hospital, the families didn't have any contact with them, and they weren't coming back. So that was the biggest scaremonger within our community.
There were disproportionately high death rates among religious minorities at the start of the pandemic. Figures from the ONS suggest that only one non-religious person had died per each 1,600 people in England and Wales between March and May last year. On the other hand, 2.2 and 2.3 people had died among Jewish and Muslim communities. This means that they were over 2 times more likely to die than most people in England and Wales, even when they only make 6.3% of the population.
Not everybody has the luxury of working from home. And sometimes individuals working in these trades come from big families. That exacerbated the situation because, somebody could be infected, they come home and they infect 10 people.
Also, for some communities in the region, maintaining essential traditions was a key concern.
Everything connected with Passover has to be different. The milk, the butter, you name it, everything basically has to change. The concern was, would there be enough food to service the community? Because it was right at the start of when people would have gone out to do their Passover shopping. I'm Russell Conn. I am the president of the Jewish Representative Council of Greater Manchester and region. Our other concern was, would the community be secure? Because, of course, we have known from bitter experience that when there are upheavals, when there is trauma, if you like, in society sometimes looks for scapegoats.
Festivals, burials, weddings, prayer services, masses, or just gathering in people's homes. Religious activities in general were halted. But with the virus ravaging lives and livelihoods across the country, religious communities were also asking themselves, what must we do?
Good morning, Cornerstone Church. Why don't you grab your Bibles, turn to Philippians chapter 1, verse 12. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to pray and ask the Lord to... The pandemic has been something that's completely shifted our approach to what it means to be the church in terms of our functionality, whilst also trying to remind people that actually we've not ceased to exist being the church. So therefore we need to do what we can where we are in this situation.
Steve Robinson is one of the pastors of Cornerstone Church Liverpool. The church is one of the many faith institutions that have been holding services online since the start of the pandemic.
The first online service that we did, we actually recorded 2 in one go, because initially we just thought it was going to be 3 weeks. We got a camera, we put it up in one of the offices in the church, and I think somebody just said hello. We didn't have any singing, and then I just preached.
We stayed at home and prayed as a family. The mosque is next door to my house, but it was closed. Somebody would go in and make the call for prayer, because that needs to be said. And then people prayed at home. A positive that came out of it was a lot of families had opportunities to sit together, have meals together, have proper conversations, and worship together.
There were what they call pop-up minyanim. A minyan is where you get 10 people together to pray. There were some very entrepreneurial people who took fences down between gardens, so they created one large open space. And in terms of synagogues, so of course the synagogues had to, when they did reopen, they all had to be reconfigured. You weren't able to sit next to people who you've spent decades sitting next to, although the progressive movement, the Liberals and Reform, have used Zoom, and they because they never reopened their synagogues.
Research suggests that many faith institutions have also been supporting vulnerable people with food during the last year. For example, a report published last November by Goldsmiths University of London showed that the number of local authorities making partnerships with faith institutions to tackle food poverty grew by 12% in the last year. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as many faith groups act independently.
In Liverpool and Oldham, groups of volunteers have been taking food to vulnerable people in their communities, while in Manchester, Jewish community groups have opened their kitchens to charities such as Meals on Wheels.
The other key issue was that we had to encourage people to continue, obeying and submitting to the authorities, the advice that was given, the guidance, and obviously the law in terms of social distancing and not being together.
The problem, as I identified, was that in certain sections of the community, they either don't speak English, or their English isn't very good, or they don't read English to a high standard. They don't have televisions, and they don't, in the main, use the internet.
There were so many conspiracy theories, and there still are so many conspiracy theories on the vaccine. It shot our community. Now, what we thought is, if we can equip our imams, the people who lead on Friday prayers, these imams will be good ambassadors for us to get the vaccine message out. As soon as that happened, we said, right, if you want to get people vaccinated, you have to provide facilities for people to come to in their communities.
So when we were producing leaflets, which were a reproduction, if you like, of the government message, we quickly decided that we needed to translate them into Hebrew and Yiddish. We also put up billboards, we also had banners. At one point, we enlisted the help of the police to remind residents about social distancing and mask wearing. So we did as much as we thought we could.
We did it from the online service, we did it through the groups. I did Facebook Lives, so and especially in the first few days, in the first weeks, obviously because things were changing very quickly, we needed to communicate quickly. So, any meetings that we had that needed to communicate, I just do a Facebook Live. It was the quickest way.
Although some places of worship have started to reopen in recent weeks, faith leaders say that there are still challenges ahead for their communities and wider society. But with searches for prayer and faith on Google being at the highest in the last 5 years, they argue that faith could be a light in the darkness.
I genuinely believe that when we come through this, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be asking questions of themselves, asking questions of life, asking questions of God, what is this?
So it's going to be a four-pronged program, if you like. Economic recovery, health and welfare, mental health, and the youth. Yeah.
We're still working on the vaccine. The month of Ramadan is coming, where the Muslim community will fast. What we're trying to introduce now within our mosque is test and trace.
There's going to be lots of need and lots of opportunity off the back end of this.